Among Valve's catalog of games, each and every one stands head and shoulders above the crowd in its genre. Half-Life stood out among the many Doom clones. Team Fortress 2 stood out from the various multiplayer shooters that prevailed in the late 2000s and early 2010s, and Portal definitely stood out among the various puzzle games of its time. And then there's Dota. Dota's gameplay was, admittedly, industry standard. It wasn't bad by any means, but consider the other examples. No Doom clone had Half-Life's physics engine and storyline, nor did most 2000 shooters have a distinct class-based system like Team Fortress 2. But Dota was quite similar to other MOBAs being developed at the time. 3 lanes, 4 abilities, 5 heroes per team. If anything, Smite was the genre outlier here, not Valve's contribution. But Dota still manages to separate itself from other MOBAs. Not in terms of gameplay, but in terms of art style. Looking at Dota compared to the other MOBAs, there is a solid difference here, and it's all thanks to the talents of Valve. See, throughout the 2000s, Valve had a pretty defined aesthetic. Looking at their catalog from Half-Life 2 to Portal to Team Fortress 2, they always focused on science fiction settings. Half-Life 2 takes place in a post-apocalyptic Europe, like worse than the normal one. Portal takes place inside of a futuristic laboratory. Team Fortress 2 takes place in a world with a somewhat alternate history involving life-preserving metal and medical practices that are impossible in our modern world. How exactly would a studio so rooted in this science fiction aesthetic tackle a medieval fantasy game? Well, to answer this question, we'll go to where this artistic journey first began. The concept art. Wait, we're not going to the concept art? Blizzard Entertainment?
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the
For those not in the know, Dota 2 was based on Dota All-Stars, which was a mod for Warcraft 3 and was published in 2003. Over the years of gaining popularity, Blizzard themselves was ready to trademark the mod and make an entire game out of it. Problem was, Valve snatched the copyright right before Blizzard could. Blizzard would then spite Valve by sending wave after wave of lawsuits for stealing characters, and you probably already know this story by now. Anyways, when Valve took on the project of Dota 2, their goal was to make a direct port of the original Dota All-Stars into the source engine, a literal one-to-one copy of the game in another engine. Now, the issue was that they couldn't just copy all of the models used in the Warcraft 3 mod for obvious reasons. Nor could they directly port the names of these characters for more obvious reasons. They had to be creative about it, which was absolutely no problem for Valve. And now to see what the artists did, we have to go into the concept art. All of the concept art for Dota 2 is available on the wiki, and I genuinely recommend scrolling through it because all of it goes hard. Seeing the early renditions of some of these characters is an awesome experience. Some highlights for me are Shadow Fiend, Tinker, and Morphling. For the record, this would make an awesome remodel. One aspect that is prevalent throughout a large majority of these artworks is the art style. This art style was all over late 20th century fantasy. This dark, gritty aesthetic permeated classics like Conan the Barbarian and Warlord of Mars. I was surprised with how dark the concept art is. It was difficult to find any bright colors like we have nowadays, but that's likely due to readability during gameplay. I was also surprised to see how many pieces of concept art would end up being the final design. Some examples include Rubik, Darkseer, and Lena. Over the years, this concept art would evolve into the incredibly recognizable characters we know today. While Dota 2 definitely has a similar style to the old 90s fantasy art, it definitely puts a twist on it. I think this is best exemplified in the comics. The first ever Dota 2 comic was drawn in this style. It's highly reminiscent of old Conan the Barbarian comics, from the shading to the emphasized character poses, but it adds more detail. It looks grittier and has a sense of realism to it. I think this page in particular is a great example. The shading on the shopkeeper's face is wonderfully done with heavy contrast, enabling the reader to distinguish his facial features very easily. This type of shading was all over old fantasy artwork. However, the twist is that Jim Murray, the artist for this comic, isn't drawing well-defined, well-proportioned warriors and damsels in distress. He's drawing these wacky, goofy cartoon characters. Despite the more serious style, these characters work great when drawn like this, and carry a lot of visual interest. It displays the artist's range and produces incredibly gripping artwork. Out of all the Dota 2 comics we have received over the years, this is easily the best looking one. Now, as Dota 2 became available to the public, the visual style became more fleshed out and refined. The artists knew what direction the game was going in, and by 2015, Dota 2 had reached the magnum opus of its art style. Everything from the main menu to the HUD were very distinguished. Every aspect of it pulled you into the world and had so much personality than the menu and default HUD we have today. I know. The main menu and the HUD aren't really the focus of this video, but man, the old one was so much better. Who asked for this minimalism? In a world where we have characters like this and like that and like these, why oh why does the menu and the HUD take on this blocky gray aesthetic? It doesn't fit the world, it doesn't immerse me, it just makes me want to ignore it as much as possible. I couldn't dream of playing Dota without a HUD skin. Anyways, tangent aside, let's take a look at the 3 aspects of this game's art style that not only make it unique, but make it really, really good. Firstly, the map. The map, I'd say, has changed the least from the concept art. However, it's been mostly degraded from the changes that have been made to it, with a few exceptions. Looking over this landscape, it has something that no other MOBA does. A place in the world. Let's compare this with League of Legends for a second, because, you know, everybody does that. Hi, Future Wilson here, with a bit of a disclaimer. This script was written I think 3 months before the whole Noxus map thing happened. Yeah, it's an old video. Yeah, I haven't gotten around to editing it. Whatever, I was working on Crownfall. But most of the criticisms still apply that I have for this. Just keep that in mind, that I wrote this pertaining to the default League of Legends map. And yeah, that's it. Carry on. A glance at the red and blue sides will tell you that they are the exact same except for color. There's nothing obvious that tells you what side of the map you're on. Nothing distinguishing between them except the color. This isn't Demacia versus Noxus, or Shurima versus the Void. It's an arbitrary location where heroes beat each other up. No context, no consequences, nothing. Nobody's here to defend anything. The creeps move and attack like robots, and I feel empty from looking at it. No lore implications, no history, nothing. The most there is the Dragon Pit, which looks like a dismantled tower. But overall, it's an empty battlefield that you don't spend any time thinking about. Now, the Dota 2 map is full of detail. It is very easy to tell which part of the map you're on because of the Radiant versus Dire dynamic. Both sides directly oppose each other, not only literally, but in every aspect. The Radiant creeps move with straight posture. They are orderly and passionately marching along to battle, while the Dire creeps slouch, dragging their blades across the ground as violent thoughts consume their minds. The Radiant towers are sleek and detailed, levitating pillars which reach the skies. Meanwhile, the Dire towers are crudely carved out of rock, shackled to the earth, harboring a crimson flame within, as if some evil force not only holds it together, but it is alive and conscious within. While the Radiant has statues to prominent figures, people of renown who once lived and died here, Dire erect structures and images of this mysterious idol that's seen in their very towers. A head with 2 horns striking from the sides. Not only are Radiant and Dire distinguished from each other, but both sides lie in ruins. Stonework overwhelmed by creeping moss and grass, archways torn down after years of warfare, flying banners worn down, fallen monuments that have not yet had the time to be reconstructed due to the amount of violence that permeates this land. It conveys so much story and so many details without saying a single word. Now, I will admit, this consistent style that makes this map so interesting has been eroded over time. Mostly in the New Frontiers update. The Watchers, Lotus Pools, and Tormentors are the exact same for both sides. Well, the Tormentors have different colors, but outside of that, these are all just gray. Nothing to tell us why they're here, nothing to tell us its history. They are placed here just out of context to serve a feature, and nothing more. I know everyone hated shrines, but at least they looked like they belonged on the map. But with the masterpiece of the map out of the way, I think it's time to move on to the second aspect which adds to this game's art style, the items. When it came to designing the items of this game, Valve showcased their artistic genius once again. None of the items veer outside of the art style. Each and every one not only looks nice, but you can tell what it does just by looking at it. What does this wind-looking staff do? It makes a tornado. What does this purple sword do? Well, looking at the other purple items and heroes in the game, if you guessed that it made you invisible, that would be correct. Ah, color. Another big factor of Dota 2 items that conveys so much information. All the green items give you attack speed or regenerate your health. What's also green? The agility icon and your health bar. If the item is light blue, chances are it provides a slow. If you see an enemy hero that has a lot of red items, you know that they are going to be tough to kill. I know it's not exactly art, but the items also have a splash of flavor text to give them their place in the world. The Assault Cuirass was forged in the Nether Reaches. It's green, just like Pugna, who's also from the Nether Reaches. And since it's green, you know it's going to give you attack speed. It's this constant connectivity to its world building and gameplay function that makes everything about Dota's items so seamless. The last aspect of Dota 2's art style is the real meat and potatoes, and that is the heroes. This art style used for the heroes is so iconic and recognizable that if something looks like it doesn't belong, it's very, very obvious. There are 3 heroes in particular that capture the essence of Dota 2's art style excellently, those being Razor, Axe, and Rubik. We'll start with Razor. No reason, just because. Razor is the embodiment of the dark fantasy genre. He might have bright colors, but this character design is dark fantasy. You wouldn't see this kind of design in a plucky young adult Chosen One story. His helmet communicates nothing but hostility. The way its horns flow and how the visor conceals his face, if he even has one, tells the viewers that not only is this thing alien, but also evil. He doesn't have a sword or an axe or a mace or any traditional weapon. He wields a whip. He's not here to kill, he's here to cause as much pain as possible. He wears these weird strips of black fabric, adding to his oddness. To top it all off, he's tall and floats above everyone, giving him a towering presence. Razor encapsulates the dark fantasy aesthetic in all but color. As a matter of fact, if you read the comic he's in, these bright colors are ditched save for the lightning shining through his visor. His colors are less vibrant, because they don't need to be. Gameplay readability doesn't come into effect here. Razor as a character design embodies the oddness of Dota's design while also carrying the dark fantasy aesthetic that makes this game's art style so iconic. And next we have Axe. Axe, I would say, has been the most inspired by Warcraft 3. He wields a comically large weapon that looks like it belongs in his hands. He's obviously supposed to look like a big red orc similar to his Dota 1 model. However, he branches off from the Warcraft 3 aesthetic to align himself with Dota's art style. In Warcraft 3, bright colors are absolutely everywhere in the armor designs. The orcs wear these blaring red colors while the humans dress up in a deep, obvious blue. This shade of red is completely absent in Axe's clothing, but is on his skin instead. His actual clothing is dull and muted, utilizing grays and browns. Even the titular axe he carries has no striking colors on it. It commits to the aesthetic, and in turn, he perfectly fits in the roster. I'd say that Axe is probably the closest to his Dota 1 model, but also represents Dota's aesthetic perfectly. Lastly, we have Rubik. Rubik is an interesting case for Dota's art style. Despite the dark fantasy vibe that most of this game carries, Rubik is surprisingly colorful, but it's not overboard. He has drastic proportions, and these dark flowing robes look almost like tendrils, and he has this staff that looks like it was a candle holder at one point, or maybe it was designed in such a way to wield the mysterious matter that levitates above. Despite the amount of colors, the most prominent thing about this design is how dark it is. The way the green and the black play together works excellently here. Why do you think people associate Rubik with green instead of black? His shape language is smooth and uniform. Nothing looks out of place on this guy. He's a wizard's wizard. Not the typically whimsical wizard with a long beard and friendly demeanor, but an inquisitive, shady wizard. You don't know his intentions. How can you? There's no face to analyze or read. Any guess is a shot in the dark. All 3 of these characters have consistent designs that fit perfectly into the world. You could stand Rubik next to a crumbling radiant statue and he wouldn't look out of place. Put Axe right onto the page of a Dota comic and it's magic. Slap Razor amongst a host of dire creeps and he looks like he's supposed to be there. Every aspect of Dota 2's art style comes together to form an amazing product. The map, the items, the heroes. Every piece was developed to perfection, crafting this amazing dark fantasy aesthetic that is unique to all the eye-bleedingly bright colors and oversaturation that you see in other MOBAs. Thank you all for watching until the end. Let me know what you love about Dota 2's art style in the comments, or maybe you don't like it. If so, I'd love to hear why. God bless, and until next time.